We really think that in discipleship, it's good to feed people, but spiritual adults, we don't want to feed them. They are able to do it by their own and even feed those the Father entrusted them with. Yeah, we try to respect that and not to induce the consumerism that is already really high in our context.
Christian, can you tell us about your background?
I live in Switzerland, the French-speaking part. I grew up in a Christian family, but not really Christian, nominal Christian family, Reformed Protestant church. And my father was military pilot in the Air Force in Switzerland. Yes, we have one. It was a beautiful childhood with nothing about Jesus until I think 16 years of age.
Tell us something about your encounter with Jesus.
A Swiss guy is a military man and has a weapon in his house. So they organize also courses to train, to learn how to shoot for young people especially. And these Christians, I don't know why, they were there shooting and preaching the gospel. So I was invited to speak with the guys several times in a row, and they really shared what they experienced. They experienced some healings and they were really on fire. And it was interesting. There were 4 in the beginning, and at the end, we were around 25 to 30 young people during 1 year coming to Christ without any spiritual parents, without any church, without any youth group or whatever. So it was very volatile. It was not really consistent, our discipleship. But I received the Bible and started to read it. I started to read the Bible, made a lot of mistakes, but as soon as I discovered something about my mistakes in the Bible, I corrected my life as good as I could. All these guys left faith in Jesus, most of them, 2 or 3 remaining, and now I have a high-level task to go to them and bring them back to the Lord. I don't know, maybe they're still saved, I hope so, but there's a lot of work to bring them back to a living relationship with Jesus. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Christian, you are the director of the Evangelical Alliance. So what's the vision and purpose of this alliance?
Yeah, I'm director of the French-speaking Evangelical Alliance in Switzerland. So Switzerland is small and French-speaking is even smaller. So I'm a really small director.
Yeah.
We work on a national level together and also together with all the French-speaking countries in Europe and abroad. And our vision is really to have 2 wings. We have for sure an institutional wing, and DMM guys like me, we don't tend naturally to connect with these institutional aspects, or not too much at least. I'm a bridge builder, so I love to connect things that are difficult to connect together. So we have a national church planting process, which is a real blessing. It's a facilitating process for every denomination. Many of them, most of them, did not plant a church for 30, maybe 40 years. And we help them just to come back to that thing, starting again, planting new churches, missional churches, not just churches where you take the best Christians from the other churches and start a new one, but really people making disciples and multiplying disciples. This is what we observe. For example, we continue Sunday after Sunday feeding adult spiritual people. As long as we do that, probably they don't feel adults and don't start multiplying themselves. And this is just one of the numerous paradigms that are really established in our context. It's like a business. You buy church, you give your tithe and you receive the program, you receive everything for your kids, you receive everything. I don't want really, and I underline that it's important for me. I really love the church in every type of form. I could not do the work of a general secretary or a director of the alliance if I would hate the bride. Jesus never was rude with his bride, maybe in the Revelations, but we're not still yet there. It's coming. But still, I think it's important to sometimes be honest and see what is hindering the growth, what is hindering multiplication. And this is what we want to focus on.
Your country, Switzerland, is famous for people like Zwingli and Blorock and Menz and Grevel.
You're right.
Heroes who reformed the church. So now you're in the second process of reforming the church again.
I think it's a revelation to be on a permanent reformation. You can have the most dynamic church having a lot of multiplication, and still you have to be aware not to settle down in some paradigms, because everything is changing permanently. So it's important to be in a reformator's mentality, not always cutting things away. Maybe some good branches still bear fruit, but maybe being aware of what God is saying today. He wants to multiply, and what is hindering the multiplication. So these are the thoughts of Zwingli, of Calvin, and others. We are maybe less on a theological reformation. We are more on a missional reformation today.
Yeah. You are designing or patterning your house churches on the family model. Can you tell us something about that one?
Yeah, exactly. We learned that complex things tend not to multiply. So we need simple things. We want to have something where everyone is stepping into the thing and saying, oh, I can do this. I'm able to do this too, even if they have just 10 minutes of life with Christ. We're searching for a picture or an analogy that is really easy and understandable for everyone. And family is one of these. And it's biblical because it's the language of the epistles. Paul is permanently speaking about his sons, and he was with the Thessalonians like a father or like a mother even. And it was really organic. It's a family life. And we use this language. We don't speak about pastors. We speak about spiritual parents. We have the pastoral function, but not really the pastors ordinated and established for that. But we have a lot of spiritual parents doing the job of multiplication, because it's great to have spiritual children. Some of them are able to bring them to life by themselves. It's always a gift, a miracle, and given by God. They do it by their own, or some adopt spiritual children from evangelists. Also, some bring people to Christ, but they don't have time to disciple 25 people at the same time. So there's adoption. It's also in the family language. As a family, we adopted 2 kids. So we know what it means in the natural, and we do it also in the spiritual for sure. So we have this family life, and there's multiplication. We invite people to become mature, and we really do discipleship in one-to-one, like we do with our children. We educate them. We learn them a lot of things. And as soon as they are ready, we send them out. If we had kept all the kids in our house, spiritual kids, we would have today a church around 600 people, but today we are 12. We could send them out. Many churches have been planted through that. And when you see your spiritual kid having a problem, you think, oh, in the natural, what would I do? And you already learned to do it. It's easy to learn the work of a spiritual parent because we already did it in the natural, most of us. And if we didn't, we have friends who did it, so we can learn from them. We are today in the 9th generation of disciples, making disciples. And this is maybe the highest number of multiplication, but the average in the movement is around 5 generations now.
And how many members would be there in an average house church?
It depends. We know that as soon as we are 20 people, we have to start making program. We have to start seeing who is looking after the kids, who is doing what. So we really tried to remain under 20 people, but we had 1 year, we were 35 in the house, but we prefer being the family size. And when we are 35, this means that we have also our spiritual grandchildren with us for a time. This can happen when we have spiritual parents. They meet Jesus, and 3 weeks later, they have 4 new spiritual babies and really need help. So we have to invite them in our house to do the discipleship with them. We also use our house to invite people to live with us. So we have a whole floor dedicated to people, families, whole families. We invite living with us. So we eat together. In the morning, we study the Bible, and it's our evangelistic tool too. We invite our neighbors or people we meet with their whole family to come and live with us. And because in Switzerland, people are very polite, we invite them in the morning to read the Bible. And because they are very polite, they come. And we read the Bible together, and we read John most of the time. After chapter 12 until 15, maybe, the whole family comes to Christ. And then they remain in our house for 5 months, maybe 7 months. We do the job of organic discipleship and having Christ as a foundation in their life. And then we send them out. Mm.
You actually believe in the African saying that it takes a whole village to educate a child, and you practice that.
We practice that, but with clear responsibilities of the spiritual parents. I think I was the main influence for my daughter. I was proud about that. And suddenly she came back home with other words from other people, not my words. And I had to admit that she meets a lot of other people with good influence for her. And finally realizing that it is really good. It is beautiful to have not just the parental influence in discipleship and also in education, but really having a whole village. We tend to select who is living in our village to have the good influences, but it's a fact, you're right.
So when you gather together, you don't just gather to teach, you gather to celebrate as a family, and teaching is part of that. And lots of other things take place, like feeding, sandwiches, famous Swiss cheese. And
Absolutely. We have to do fondue is mandatory. We have to do it every time. No, it's no, it's not true. But it could happen. We eat together. We love to sing together. We love to dig into the Bible and search something. We don't preach or teach so much because in discipleship we already do it a lot. But sometimes we say that we cook together, meaning some guys we have a topic and did not prepare it. And some guys are jumping into the New Testament, others into the Old Testament, other ones non-Christians, because they're always non-Christians with us. They jump into Google, and we take 1 hour to search and dig and find. And then we bring all these things together, and it's a beautiful spiritual meal. For sure, you have to know a bit about the topic because it could become strange from time to time. But yeah, it's a more inclusive dynamic. Not so much feeding people. We really think that in discipleship, it's good to feed people. But afterwards, spiritual adults, we don't want to feed them. They are able to do it by their own and even feed those the Father entrusts them with. So yeah, we try to respect that and not to induce the consumerism that is already really high in our context.
And you have values for your ministry. 18 values, I heard.
Yes.
What are some of those values?
I do church consulting. So I help churches to have a good structure to celebrate and also be missional for sure. And we advise people to just have 5 to 8 values maximum. And we have 18 because in the beginning of our movement, 18 years ago, we started from 4 couples coming from different backgrounds, and we just had to find what we believe and how we would, for example, the whole financial thing. Do we have tithing, or do we just say in the New Testament, everything belongs to God? So we have to see with God every month what you can have between 0 and 100%. We had to speak about it. It ended up in a value where we decided, okay, this is the way we want to handle the financial aspects of our movement. Others very important values is that we don't want to disconnect prayer, evangelism, discipleship, and church planting. In many churches, it is still disconnected. It's just a church activity. If you want to start a new discipleship course, you start it and then you finish it, and you don't have preparation in evangelism before, you don't have prayer before. It's just, activities, church activities. And one of our key values is that we want to have a multiplication process. It starts in praying. I pray for my neighbor, and I pray for years for my neighbor. When I meet him, the gospel just jumps out of my mouth. I hear myself preaching the gospel to my neighbor because I pray for him for such a long time.
I want to ask you about structures. Most people think that house churches do not need any structure, but I think you think differently.
Yeah, we have a lot of people, around 10 to 20 people willing to join our movement, but you cannot join the movement because you meet Jesus and then you can be part of it. So it's not for already born Christians, except if we feel that God really wants to give us this person as a key leader also in the region or so. And then we have a grafting process. Many of these people come and say, we don't like structures and so on. We say, sorry, we already have a structure, because family is a structure. It's a simple structure. It's an organic structure. So we're not an organization. We are a well-organized organism. There's nobody just disconnected from all the organism in this movement. So everyone is related to someone. in the generational multiplication simply. But there can be a grafting process, but it's a 2-year process, and it's a long time for someone who wants to join a movement. So it's on purpose. We know why we do that, because it uses 4 times more energy to graft a person already Christian to that movement than discipling a person from scratch. So we are really careful doing that. So yes, we have a structure. It's a simple one. At the same time, with the Evangelical Alliance, I see a lot of churches willing to integrate some DMM principles in their way to live church. And for sure, it needs a lot of paradigm shifts and new revelations and a clear focus on multiplication if you want to do that. And so we designed some transitional models from a community church to become a missional church, more active in the mission. And we had some troubles with some pilot projects we had. So around 10, 15 did not work. But today we have 4 or 5 places where really a multiplication takes place, and not just addition, but really multiplication of disciples. So it's encouraging. And I think we already have in Europe a lot of churches, big churches, even maybe smaller than in America, but still in our context, big churches. And if we imagine that if all these churches had a clear revelation on the mission field and becoming missional, it would be absolutely amazing. It would be a major impact. And many of them maybe also would want to start new DMM contexts. So yeah, we see that as a strategic point for Europe to help community churches to develop a missional way to live the community church and be a tractional church, but at the same time being a real standing apostolic church in the field.
So you say there are many examples of structure in the Bible. The bride is structured. She's not amorphous, shapeless.
Exactly.
You say the army of God is structure. You say the body of Christ has structure. The flock, construction of building, etc. The family, they all have structures, and they're sort of in the Bible. And you mentioned that if the structure is fuzzy, then it dwindles second, third, fourth, then it dwindles after that. It doesn't continue to multiply. What's your take on that?
I think we tend to serve the structures in the end in places. We can observe that the structure is not serving the purpose, the vision, but we start to serve the structure. And all our energy, resources, and time is invested in maintaining a structure because people pay for that structure, or people want that structure. It can also be a risk in our context to have people sticking too much into family, and we are so well together. It's great to be together, and that's also a threat for our way to live church. But I think it's what I observe most of the time when I'm asked to help a church, to coach a church towards something more missional. I have to deal with that. I have to clarify, do we want to have a structure that helps us for the purpose? We're here, the church has to exist for those who are not in the church, or are we just serving the structure and using one minister after the other, ending in burnout? And because it's very difficult to serve in traditional structures. In many situations, we see a 5-year growth of burnouts in our context of pastors and worship leaders, and people to deal with the structure as their main work.
Christian, you have for kids a special program called Tilt. And what does this tilt mean?
You did your research. That's impressive. As parents, we feel that we are really responsible for our kids. We just cannot outsource the kid work. So every one of us is mobilized to take care spiritually and also for sure for education and other things of our kids. But we can do it together from time to time. So parents come together and have a course for the 11 to 13 years old. And we meet maybe 10 times where we have half of the time we speak about God, something very important for this age. And then the second part of the evening, we learn how to change a wheel on a bike, or we learn how to help doing cooking or whatever. It's very practical things. And it's interesting to have the combination of spiritual work and growing spiritually and also being prepared to become a teen. This is the purpose of the Tilt.
Christian, what is the role of prayer in a movement?
Yeah, we for sure are 80% oriented external, to the out. We were reoriented to our neighbors and people God wants to give us. We call them VIPs. They're very important persons for us. In John 17, Jesus says, I'm not praying for everyone, for the world. I'm praying for those the Father entrusted me with. So he was really focused on his disciples, and he really had a prayer activity directed to these 12, not only prayer, but also discipleship. And as a rabbi, he also invested a lot in their lives, but he really focused his prayer life on these disciples. And I think it's something we do also, really pray for the harvest before we have these disciples God gives us. And then when God has given them to us, we really continue praying all the time for those who the Father entrusted us with. And we see really strong breakthroughs. We have even people with mental problems, health problems, and so, but we see that God really does a great work. And even weak people, no one would bet on them, really. And they become the most beautiful disciple makers we have in the movement. It's just amazing what prayer can change in the life of our disciples. If you have 80% outward prayer, we have also 20% inward. So it means we also pray for the consistency, the DNA of our movement. It's fragile. We know that if we join external Christians to our movement, we have a mixture of the DNA, and suddenly things are really different. And we really try to remain in the same DNA. It's a tough job to have a DNA, a missional DNA, a multiplying DNA that is not ultra modified by many Christians coming in and having good ideas, but just making things complex or making things difficult to multiply.
So you encourage simple, direct dialogue with Jesus when you say prayer. And you use tools and technologies and WhatsApp, etc., to share topics.
We have Bible breakfast in the morning every day. So people read the Bible, read a chapter, and share just what Jesus said to them and what they will do with that during the day. And it's just a great dynamic. It's like a virtual community, but it's a real community still coming together from time to time. I think it's a part of the future of the church, having these digitalized models. I discipled someone only through digital tools. And I have to say, it's for me, I'm really relational. So it was a little bit difficult for me. But the guy met Jesus. I met him just once on the phone. He met Jesus, and then he went to Canada. But I did the job of a spiritual father. So I discipled him for 9 months. It was really long, but we never saw each other for now, but it works. So I prefer visually because we can drink something, we can eat fondue for sure. And yeah.
Christian, how do you manage finance in your system?
As a movement, we can really bless a lot of things going on in Switzerland and elsewhere. As we don't have ministers, we don't have houses or buildings, church buildings. Basically, in our house church, we have around 4,000 to 6,000 Swiss francs overflowing every month. So we're permanently asking God, how can we bless with these finances? And we really appreciate blessing outside of our movement and also in a missional way where we can make the difference. And for example, in our school place here, we could pay the school vacation, and many people with migrant background, they cannot afford these camps. And we could offer these camps to over 35 young guys in the place here. And nobody knows it except the authorities. And that's really interesting because they know that we are generous and that we want the good for the city and for the place. And that's also a kind of a blessing we can have, especially in Switzerland. People are sensitive on financial things.
In your gatherings, you have this very interesting times that you separate. You have prophetic time when you listen to God for people. You have apostolic times when you focus on movement. You have pastoral time when you pray and enjoy the challenges of the moment. And you evangelical time. And then you have doctoral times. And then you have a meal time.
Yeah, we realize that if you have a small group and you don't give a color to the meeting, you end up in the pastoral because people have a lot of needs. And you could have every meeting could be pastoral times where you take care of people. And we have to do that. We do it in the discipleship for sure, or every day in normal life. But when we meet, Sometimes it's good also to pray together and to be sensitive together, to laugh together, to cry together. That's a very good thing to do. But if we don't add other type of meetings, it ends up in the pastoral. And we can observe that in many prayer groups in churches, where most of the time people just share their sufferings and they pray for themselves. So it tends to focus inward and not to be still oriented to the mission field. And we love to go along the fivefold ministry, where we have prophetic times. Always we have non-Christians with us, and we listen what God is saying. And it's incredible, but they hear God too. Then we have also times of evangelism. We mainly do friendship evangelism with our neighbors, but we also love to go to the streets and meet people, just pray for them and sharing the gospel. And we see that the fields are white in Switzerland too, and in Europe globally too. And we see that it's possible to reap the harvest, John 4:38. And this is the evangelistic aspect of it. Then we have also pastoral thing. And many times what they live in between is a blessing for our next meeting. We're not meeting focused, or our focus is on everyday discipleship. And we consider our meetings just as a bonus, a welcome bonus. We love to meet each other, but it's not the focus. We don't want to be focused around these meetings.
Yeah, your meeting takes place 24/7. Only once in a while you do get together to share and celebrate.
Exactly. Absolutely. Thank you so much for this way to say it. It's perfect.
Is your movement spilling into other countries?
Yes, we met some very good guys from France, and it was a pleasure to connect with them. We will become partners in the work together for Toulouse, for Marseille, and some others. I already coached some young church planting movements in France. Belgium is still a little bit difficult to reach, but in France, many things are happening today.
Okay, Christian, now you have your 10 minutes. So would you like to leave whatever message you want to?
When Jesus asks us to lay down our lives for those who the Father wants to give us, we tend, at least in Switzerland, to delegate this to an evangelist and pastor. Bring us a good new believer, dear evangelist, and take care of it or of them, dear pastor. No problem, we can pay for that. I call this low consecration. Maybe another one. When Jesus says, I will build my church, and a few chapters later, go and make disciples, Matthew 16 and Matthew 28, we tend to put all our time, energy, and resources doing exactly the opposite. We plant churches and ministries and run them with high star systems, with our own plans and our strengths, and let Jesus disciple the newborn believers. I call this control over everything. And this is probably one of our giants. When Paul says that as a wise architect, 1 Corinthians 3, he has built a foundation in the lives of the Corinthians. He was speaking about discipleship, and that Apollos has built upon this foundation. We tend to mix up these roles and often forget to build the solid foundation Jesus wants to be in us. And I call this no discipleship. When Jesus asks us to go and sell everything we have to give it to the poor, and when I say we, everyone can identify with that or not, I do. We tend to prefer the comfort of a wealthy life and only give a bit of our overflows to the needy people. I call this wellness gospel. When Paul says to the Thessalonians that he has been like a father and a mother for them, we tend to think that the church just needs one and only father, also called pastor, for all Christians in the church, basically like in an orphanage. I call this no spiritual parents or no fertility. Two more. When Jesus tells us the story of the person who put all his resources into buying the field with the treasure, we tend to buy all the fields in the valley so that we can resell many of them to make our investment profitable. It's a joke, but it's the way we work. And I call this strong cupidity. And when Jesus calls us to step out of the boat, to walk on water towards him, we tend to first check scientifically the quality of the water to be sure we will not get a skin reaction if the water isn't clean enough. After the analysis, we forget the call we received from Jesus and we never step out of the boat. I call this small faith. I hope I don't offend anyone. It's not about criticizing, just sharing what I said before, going from the good to the better. So there are probably more of these, but to summarize, low consecration, control over everything, no discipleship, wellness gospel, no spiritual parents, strong cupidity, and small faith. And please believe me, in our context, we do our best to fight against these giants. And we are really thankful for our slow, even slow growth. It happens, but it's so slow because these giants still are here. In our DMM context, we see these giants shrink significantly. That's right. I can testify that. But they are still hidden somewhere in the background. They are hard to kill. I know that it is through prayer that we can have them staying in the background and not becoming active in a certain way. I see more and more places catching the revelation of the centrality of Christ and his commandments, the great commandment of love before the great commission as a consequence, direct consequence of that love. And in these places, disciples start making disciples over many spiritual generations. But I feel strongly that there is more. There is much, much more. And this is why I say that we need your help around the globe, everywhere. And again, this is a call to prayer for Europe, for the missional field in Europe. The harvest is ready. The fields are wide. It is true for years now. And we want to see that harvest taken into the kingdom of God.